What's up, Bitcoiners? Good morning, Bud. Good morning, Bitcoin Pilgrim. Good morning, Kevin. What's a Wormtongue? Well, Lord of the Rings. Come on, it's the guy who whispers into the ear of the King of Rohan and makes him weak. And the reason I chose it for the title today, obviously, Elon Musk tweeted that Twitter was the world's Wormtongue. So I try to make my titles draft behind some current news, but there you go. But before we go anywhere, we can't talk about all this stuff until we acknowledge the sun has risen and Bitcoin is still running. So we're good. Now we can talk about stuff, right? We got to acknowledge the sunrise and Bitcoin's consistent running. Let's have our coffee. Any day, guys, every time I taste it, we're one sip closer to hyper-Bitcoinization. Right? That's why we're here. That's why we're here. So the news is pretty funny today, as usual. And now it's Sunday morning. I'm going to give you a personal spiritual belief of mine before we jump into the content, and it's this. Schadenfreude, so taking pleasure in other people's misery, is probably the way to get possessed by demons and ill forces in the world. I kind of think that, right? You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't take pleasure in other people's misery. You shouldn't take pleasure in other people's pain. And Schadenfreude, as I said, can tear good people down, right? So what I'm about to say, even though it tears other people down, remember, I'm not really enjoying it, right? Because I'm not taking pleasure in their misery. I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of a laugh, because I think, God has a sense of humor, and while we shouldn't revel in it, while we shouldn't wish such ill upon people, and while we shouldn't gloat when others are miserable, at the same time, if we don't have a little bit of a laugh, what are we doing here, right? So Le Monde this morning talks about Ava Kiley. Does anyone know who Ava Kiley is? I've worked with her before. She's the vice president, one of the 9 vice presidents of the European Union, and one of the biggest blockchain shitcoin salespeople going. She's been on the conference. That's how I know her. She's been on the conference circuit looking for junkets for 7 or 8 years now. Oh, blockchain's going to change the world. I always knew it was a scam because, in her part, because she was a socialist member of parliament, and I am prejudiced in general against socialists. I love their goals. I'm 100% for what they want to achieve in certain aspects of society. I don't want to see poor people starving. I don't want to see people without health care. Right? I just don't think you should steal the money to pay for it. I still want the same harmonious society they pretend to want, right? So, or at least they say they want. So I'm not anti-socialist in some of their goals, right? But when they're out there peddling crappy technology and spending people's money, well, we don't like it. So now you must know this about Ava Kiley. She's very pretty woman. I think she was a model at some point, right? So she's abnormally beautiful for a politician. Abnormally beautiful for a politician. And what did she do with all of these opportunities? Where did she go? Right? What happened? Well, there is a sense of humor out there. While us North Americans, people in the United States, are being threatened in our tax disclosures this year with all $600 transactions, right? The $600 transaction thing that's in America. Well, Ava Kiley, turns out she took $600,000 from the Qataris. It's all this corruption shit. So she got arrested. She's arrested today. So I'm not going to see her at any more events. I don't think she's going to show up at any more blockchain events. So that saves me some trouble. But the socialist blockchain simping member of parliament from the European Union got arrested on corruption charges today, right? It's great. It's awesome. Now, on the same Schadenfreude thing, right? We're not taking pleasure in her misery. We're laughing at the irony, right? It's not the same thing, right? We can have a little laugh at the irony. It turns out Sweden might have a bit of an ironic moment coming up as well. So Sweden, very much like my home area of Quebec. I've been to Sweden. It reminds me a lot of where I'm from. Very beautiful women, nice people, very polite, great manners. Quebec and Sweden have a lot in common. I've said it many, many times. We are also as energy abundant and energy rich, right? Sweden has a lot of energy, just like Quebec. They got the hydroelectric stuff, they got the dams, they got the rivers, they got the lakes, right? They're doing great. They even had some nuclear power, but you know, they made a mistake. They made a mistake. They listened maybe a little too much to their favorite daughter. You know, they have a young girl who's from Sweden. Her name is Greta. And Greta became like a major celebrity in that country. And they started actually following her policies, you know, and they thought, because she was really unhappy, she was like a depressed teenage girl. And so a bunch of people said, well, we can't have a depressed teenage girl around us. I mean, what are we going to do with a depressed, how can we live? A teenage girl is depressed? Oh my God. Oh my God, let's change our energy policies. Let's change our energy policies. Let's go from being energy rich to, we're not sure, but maybe she'll be happy. I wonder if she's happy today, because their largest nuclear power plant is on the bricks. It ain't working. And the country of Sweden looks like they're going to have some rolling blackouts. Now, rolling blackouts in California, not really a big deal. It's 70 degrees every day. But Sweden, as I said, much like Quebec, also shares Quebec's cold in common. So what's the temperature right now in Sweden as they've got their imminent brownouts happening? It's pretty cold, right? The first cold front that Europe's experiencing this year is moving through. The prices of energy in England now are the highest they've ever been recorded as of this morning, right? It might abate in a few days. We'll see how long this cold snap lasts. But from the very country of the great Greta, we have Sweden now, who I just hope she's happy. I hope tonight she's finally happy. Is she still a teenage girl? I'm not sure. I don't know how old she is. I don't think she's a teenager anymore. But hopefully tonight, when she sees the power go down and everyone's cold in Sweden, maybe she'll finally be happy. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. We don't know. Greta, I hope you're happy tonight. I hope you got everything you wanted just before Christmas. Sweden having some energy troubles. All right, so the big story of the day, of course, is the Twitter Files Part 4. Now, everyone, you know, it's sort of becoming split on the internet. Are people, what do they think about Elon's strategy of putting it into, you know, one journalist a day for a part? It's been Matt Taibbi, then Barry Weiss, then back to Matt Taibbi. Now we're at Michael Schellenberger. And then we're going to go back to Barry Weiss, I think, tomorrow. Now, I just want to underline on this show, before Elon picked those three people were three of my steady sources for content on the show. Just pointing it out, right? That Elon and I had pretty similar assessments of who's credible out there. So that's, you know, just mentioning it for this quality of the show, so that we know that Elon also thought highly of the same people I did, and who used to help inform this program. So we like everyone he's chosen. So people saying, should it be done this way? Should they drip it out? We don't know. I like the drip, and I'll tell you why. Cernovich said it. So Mike Cernovich said this. The baddies, right, in any of these things, the people who are worried, if they released everything at once, would just go into the pile, look for their name, and then if they're not mentioned, they would immediately go on the offense and start joining the chorus to help shape narrative and spin what's being said and readjust in real time to how things are being processed by the public. So his argument, and I agree with it, is that if you release it in drips, you actually destabilize those people. You keep everyone on edge. Maybe they won't even be in there. But anyone who has a bit of a guilty conscience around any of this stuff suddenly is going to be frozen in place, and they're not going to be able to act, and they're not going to be able to join in the counter-narrative programming. So for that reason alone, I think it's great, right? For that reason alone, I think it's great. Now, one of the problems, though, with this system of every day is the narrative is changing very quickly. And there's things that people want to see that they can even hallucinate. You know, we talk about hallucinating a lot on this show. So, and hallucinations in general, when you see something that isn't there, is always suspect, right? Taking something out of a scenario is much easier. That's a mistake. I didn't see it, I didn't notice it, or whatever. But imagining something into it, much more active, right? Much more active. So you got to pay attention to that. So let's start first with the Twitter files, and then go into the reaction, because this hallucination piece is affecting Jack Dorsey. And because this is a Bitcoin show, and Jack is a Bitcoiner, I'm going to talk quite a bit about Jack and how this stuff has affected him. So Schellenberger's thing comes out yesterday. It's part 4. It's the removal of Donald Trump. So it's everything that happened on Twitter January 7th, the day after January 6th, and the day before it was finished forever. So as the pressure builds, this is Michael Schellenberger. Twitter executives build the case for a permanent ban. On January 7th, senior Twitter execs create justifications to ban Trump, seek a change of policy for Trump alone, distinct from other political leaders, and express no concern for the free speech or democracy implications of the ban. That's the TLDR of the whole thing. And here's the part where everyone's attacking Jack Dorsey today. Jack Dorsey testified later, saying they don't shadow ban. Here, and not only did they not shadow ban, that they hadn't changed their policies technically around Trump, and they're saying that this is a form of liability, that he's guilty now. He lied to Congress and those things. So first of all, let me just put that to the side for a second and say there is no intention, or that's not even the way to say it. If you believe what you're saying to Congress, if you believe what you're saying is correct, it's not lying, even if it's wrong. Being wrong and lying are not the same thing. Right? So everyone out there today imagining that Jack Dorsey was actively lying to Congress when he said they don't shadow ban, and this is the story from yesterday, the visibility filtering thing. So that's when a lot of people all of a sudden said, oh, Jack's in trouble. This time they got him, right? They got him this time. I can't see it, right? I can't even see Yoel Roth being technically on the, like, illegal, his behavior, right? Unsavory, and in his case worse. We're going to get into Yoel Roth in a second. But in the case of Jack Dorsey, if he's telling what he thinks is the truth, it's almost impossible for it to be illegal. And I'll explain why. There's a million cases of this happening every day, right? Now, the thing where they say it's illegal, the like-kind contributions, right? This whole thing where it's a like-kind contribution, and that's what makes it illegal. So there's the, did you lie to Congress, yes or no? Probably not, right? But then it goes into the political donations piece, right? Well, the like kind. They said, well, they're totally in the bag for the Democrats. True, right? But are they more in the bag or less in the bag than like MSNBC or CNN or Fox for Republicans? No, no. It's the same game. They're playing the same game. They're clearly in the bag for one party, but is that illegal? Not so. MSNBC is not, what it's doing is not illegal. I don't think. Now, did they go and suppress people's voices? Yeah, but that's what they do. They have policies that, if they improperly implement the policy, sure, it's definitely censorship. But nevertheless, if they don't believe it to be, that has a lot to do with it. Intention is almost everything in this formula, right? We have to understand intentions. When it comes to criminal courts, intention is everything. It's literally everything, right? Did you do it? Was there intention? We say actus reus, the act of doing it. Was the act real, right? Actus reus. That's why when you just get a fine for speeding, they don't have to prove intent. It's just, did you do it, right? Because there's no prison associated. The minute you put prison into the equation, you need the intent piece on top. And if you don't prove intent, there's no criminal behavior whatsoever. So to the extent that so many things were held from Jack over the years, I personally just can't see what people were hallucinating yesterday, that he had done something wrong. I can't see it. Everyone's saying, oh, this is a instant, he's guilty, he's got to go to jail, oh my God. Where? Where? I don't think he lied to Congress. I don't. Did they have policies to remove people? Yeah. Did they tweak the policy before Trump was taken off? It looks like they did. They removed him from being a public figure, but that wasn't necessarily Jack in particular going into that one file. And even if they did, it doesn't make it illegal. It doesn't. And I'll explain why. We're going to get into why today. We're going to get into the why. It's a lot to do with Hollywood and some things that are out there and all that. So I'll explain why it might have been illegal at one time, years ago. I don't believe it to be illegal now. Unsavory, yes. Right? Unsavory, for sure. But illegal, that's another question. And if what Twitter was doing, even by siding with the Democrats, if that was illegal, then MSNBC has to be taken off the air, and so does Fox. They have to both be taken off the air. So it's a media platform like others. I don't think that is in question. So to assume that it has some other responsibility out there is strange. Now, we can be just as angry about what's going on, whether it's legal or illegal, right? The criminality of it doesn't really matter here. The lying and the gaslighting, as we've said, right? That all these people said there was shadow banning going on, and they were told no. What you're seeing is not true. Like that's really bad stuff, right? And I think people should be angry. But as far as criminality, I continue to think Jack is as innocent today as he was 3 days ago. And I continue to see Jack say, show everything, because I don't think he believes he's guilty of anything. Now, did people do stuff under him that he didn't know about that might be illegal? Yeah, I think there's potentially some criminality there, but the window for criminality here is not very large. Right now, I'm only trained as a lawyer. I don't practice law. I haven't been a criminal lawyer, none of those things, but I at least understand the language, and I can't see it. I've looked at what some lawyers thought, and they're hallucinating, some of them, and I don't see it. When they say the like-kind political contributions, what? That's not a thing. Like, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. Again, what would they do with Fox? Is Fox a like-kind contribution to the Republican Party? I don't think so. So for me, the criminality here is not in question. Other stuff, yes, and we'll get into it right now, right? So we know, and this is what Glenn Greenwald says about these findings, right? He says, Twitter execs were regularly meeting with the FBI over what to censor. Twitter's censorship was almost 100% aligned with the Dem Party. Twitter's chief censors were deranged ideologues abusing their power over discourse to silence dissent. And that's where things become interesting, right? It's this idea that they were ideologues. And one way to interpret that piece, right, even when you read what Yoel is saying, like, he literally believes that Trump is a Nazi. I mean, he believes it, right? So I already said, even to explain what might have happened in the 2020 election, whether or not Biden could have gotten, 84 million votes or something, the most ever, is that reasonable? Is that possible? And I said, well, look, or even if there was some, double counting or people did whatever, in the end, the picture painted of Trump was so bad that you almost can't expect anything less of most Americans, if they're a little bit patriotic, to fight against it, because they believed he was Hitler. I mean, they really believed it. Like Yoel Roth, I believe he's sincere. I believe he actually thought that he was saving America from a Hitler-type figure. And because of that, because they've been poisoned, psychologically poisoned in this way, the guilty part becomes very difficult to prove or even make a case for. Now, there's other things that this fella has done that we're going to talk about that are not great. So I think that the attention Yoel Roth is gathering right now is great, and people even thinking, is this criminal or not? I'm not trying to stop that. I'm not really even trying to defend him. I'm just trying to avoid hallucinating a crime here that I don't see. And I saw lots of people yesterday, all the people from the conservative camp, finally we know Jack is a criminal and Jack screwed us and Jack did all this stuff. I can't see it. I just can't see it, right? I tried to see it, but I don't see it. And again, I don't think it's a crime to favor one party just because everyone is doing it. And I'll explain why it's literally not a crime in a second, right? It's literally not a crime. They'll say, oh, they were doing, PR for the DNC, right? It's the same thing that people were saying about Elon, or the same canned quotes that I've been mentioning all week. Oh, Matt Taibbi, you're doing PR for a billionaire. Well, now the conservatives are saying that Twitter was doing PR for the DNC. It might look that way, and it's certainly, the numbers are clear. It's not good, right? The infiltration of Twitter that we talked about by the FBI yesterday, really bad, right? Red flags all over the place, all over the place. But criminal in the case of Roth or Dorsey, I don't think so. Even in the case of Dorsey, I don't even see how you can find him guilty of anything in this case. You know, I think he was out of touch. I think things were kept from him. As we know, when all this stuff happened with Trump, he was doing the normal thing most CEOs would do, take a vacation. He was in French Polynesia those weeks, trying his best to see what's happening, but no one knew there was going to be all this stuff, right? And now to come and say that he was involved in this stuff and somehow he's got to be thrown in jail, I mean, I don't see it. Not even close, not even close. And I'm not doing this just because he's a Bitcoiner. I just don't see it. Yoel Roth, again, I can't see it. And he's not a Bitcoiner, and I don't give a shit about Yoel Roth. There's other reasons why I'm not a fan of his, and I'll tell you in a second, right? But as far as what he did, I think he's just a victim. In some ways, a victim of the same type of Psy-ops that are all around us all the time, right? And this show is about Psy-ops. And Yoel Roth, I think, was just a fool. I think he just got duped. I think he just fell for this myth that Trump is a literal Nazi. And I think he thought he was being a patriot. Now, I'm mind reading 100%. There's details I'm missing, all kinds of stuff, right? I'm definitely mind reading here, because if you're trying to figure out someone's intent, it's what's going on inside their head, right? I don't have any special insight into what's going on into Yoel Roth's head. All I can say is I don't think you're going to find anything where he actively deceived and tried to alter what was going on. His tweaking and interpreting of the terms and conditions, or the whatever the use of policy of Twitter, is, I think, within the realm of his job. Now, did he have too much power? Yeah. That's corporate stuff, right? Did the head of security have too much power in the company? Of course. It looks like it was a terrible candidate to put in that position. It looks like he had no capacity to do the job well. It looks like he made it up as he went along, and he left the company exposed to criticism. He left the company exposed to all of this. This is all him being not good at his job, but that's not a crime. It's not a crime. Lying isn't even a crime, by the way. Lying is not a crime. You can lie, right? You can lie, unless it's to Congress, but you can lie. Like, that's not, you don't go to jail for lying at all, right? You got to hurt somebody to go to jail in some way. Financially, you got to prove you have damage. You have to damage them. Lying can damage someone, but you got to prove that. You got to prove that the act of lying damaged someone, and then that you intended for them to get damaged from your lie. It's that complicated. For reasons we can all understand. We don't want an arbitrary system that would throw you into jail without the proper defenses. That's why we built it this way, right? You would want the same defenses in those cases. If you were Yoel Roth right now, and you had none of his other dirty stuff, which I'm about to get into, and all you did was got tricked, thought someone was bad, read into your own policies that the way they were bad could be dealt with by you, and you believed you should do it 100%, that's not a crime. In any world, that's not a crime. It's not. So, you know, everyone out there imagining that they see crimes from the Twitter files, there might not be correct, right? Again, I'm sure we're going to see some litigation around this stuff, but I don't see it. I just don't see the crimes. Now, I see the reasons for which Musk is in charge. I 100% am happy with him owning it. I 100% am glad this stuff is coming to light. It's really bad. We know the system was manipulated, but again, not a crime. Not a crime. Is Fox manipulating the system when it goes on and on about one of their right-wing celebrities? No. It's not, right? So, but here's where things go crazy a little bit, right? And this is where I fall back to this narrative poisoning, the narrative poisoning, right? How did this happen that someone like Yoel Roth really believed he was standing up to Hitler, right? Well, let's look a little bit into Yoel Roth's history. So now they're starting to talk about his PhD thesis, right? People are going into all kinds of his history, and it turns out he wrote his entire PhD, and now it's been pulled off the internet. He wrote his PhD on whether high school students can meaningfully consent to sex with their teachers. And Elon says that it was Eliza Blue who shared that, and Elon Musk replied to her, "This explains a lot." And here's where he then Elon even takes the passage out where he does the logic, Grindr, which is, I guess, a gay sex meetup thing, like what's the one that the people hook up with? I don't remember. There's an app people use to date and all this stuff. Swipe right, I guess. I don't remember what it's called. But Grindr, I guess, is a gay one. And he's saying here that, whoa, there's all these young people on Grindr now. What do we do with them? We have to find a way to make young people safe on Grindr, right? Pre-18s. So a lot of people today very upset about this, right? And so they should be. And it reminds me of, and we talked about Podesta yesterday, right? John Podesta, who was Clinton's campaign manager, whose niece just left Twitter 2 days ago, and she was another person in charge of the child piece, right? I mean, unbelievable. So this stuff absolutely has to be looked into. Obviously, Yoel, Podesta. So this is separate from Trump coming off. This is what I'm saying here is separate from Trump coming off, right? This is another totally different piece, right? But remember this narrative poisoning piece, right? Well, did you guys know that in 2013, Obama repealed a law in the United States which allowed for propaganda and psychological persuasion to be used by American institutions on American people. That was illegal before. Now, they couched it all as, Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, all these tools that Americans use to spread their message abroad, principally designed during World War II as pure propaganda outlets by Edward Bernays, who we talk about quite a bit on this show. So these things were created deliberately, and then they weren't shut off after World War II. They were kept on. And it was deemed that their government propaganda, because everyone in America knew what it was, should never be turned on Americans. So you're not allowed to have it with studio quality recording. You're not able to have access to it, right? You're not able to have access to it. And in 2013, Obama repealed that. So a lot of people said, oh, it's not a big deal. You guys are exaggerating. This is one of these things where you're hallucinating. It's way more pedestrian than you think. PolitiFact has a fact check on people saying that Obama allowed propaganda to be injected by American institutions and American government institutions onto the people, right? So PolitiFact says, a Facebook post claims Obama made it legal for the media to purposely lie to American people when he signed this bill, allowing propaganda to be used in the United States on citizens of the United States by the U.S. government, essentially repeating the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, banning the use of domestic propaganda. So their logic here is that Obama did sign it and also changed the stuff. And they said, but it's false that he allowed propaganda to be used. That's what they say. They fact check this as false, right? Tinder, yeah, sorry, Tinder. Everyone's giving me the name. Tinder, yeah. So they say pass the Smith modernization, but the bill did not make it legal for independent private sector media outlet to present outright false information to the public. Instead, it allowed government-sponsored news like Voice of America to broadcast in the United States. It removed restrictions on US-generated news from being presented to American audiences. So, and they go in, oh, but this is all normal media, don't worry. This adheres to journalistic standards, they say, right? It's not propaganda. It's nothing like that. It's all good. Don't worry about it. So fact check false that you can say that, right? Fact check false that you can say that, even though it's clear that their explanation makes no sense. It makes no sense. I've read it several times and even looked into their reasons for which we should trust the government-sponsored media outlets. And it's literally like, they adhere to standards, they adhere to standards, don't worry about them. It's false. They adhere to standards, right? So obviously this didn't happen, right? And immediately after this, you get this article that Max Kaiser sent around yesterday, and everyone has been sending it around since. which is a headline. This article appeared exactly 3 months after this thing changed. In the long run, this is the headline, Washington Post, right? In the long run, wars make us richer and safer, right? So Max yesterday saying, in the long run, Bitcoin makes us loving and independently wealthy. There are other examples, right? Immediately, so the headline, when this happened, U.S. quietly repeals propaganda ban, spreads government-made news to Americans. This was written in 2013, July 15th, 2013. These are headlines. This is from Yahoo Finance. U.S. government-funded domestic propaganda has officially hit the airwaves. And that's another one from Business Insider with a very similar title. So this started going on from then on for quite a while. And this is what I find so interesting. So forget about Jack, forget about Yole for a second, right? But let's find out about the thing that we read about with the kids, for sure, right? For sure. But this is the problem, right? This is Glenn Greenwald, right? This is Glenn Greenwald, and talking about all this stuff, right? And talking about how there were journalists who think that now just think it's normal for the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security to be so embedded and involved in communications companies, right? So this is what they say. This is what Glenn Greenwald says. The most mystifying thing to me in all of this. Fine, liberals like more online censorship and conservatives like less, in part because the censorship benefits liberals, right? That's the most reasonable take here, right? I can live with that. What we see here is that liberals like a little more censorship or a lot more, and conservatives like less. I can live with that fight all day long, right? I can live with that. If that's what it was, and that's what I see with the Jack thing, and that's what I see with some of the Twitter people involved, right? But that's not what I see when you go further, and that's what he says here. But why can't everyone agree that the U.S. security state, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, should have no role in any of this, right? If you regard yourself as a journalist and see these revelations as either trivial or positive, meaning that you think the state of affairs revealed here is either meaningless or more likely encouraging, you're nothing more than a partisan authoritarian. No way around it. Why should the U.S. security state have any role at all in influencing, cajoling, pressuring, demanding, or dictating to social media companies what content they should and should not permit? That's about propagandizing the citizenry, not protecting it, right? And now, did you guys ever hear about this 4th Psychological Operations Group, the Army's 4th Psychological Operations Group? I beg you to go and have a look at a commercial they produced on YouTube. You're not going to believe the thing. It's unreal, right? They go on about how, let me find the, I wrote it down here somewhere. Oh yeah. Anything we touch, right? They say, anything we touch, we are the tip of the sword. It's an unbelievably produced video, by the way, unbelievably produced. And I'll get into the main figure. The main figure in the video is an orchestrator, right? With a wand, right? With a wand. So he's sitting there doing this, and you see people moving and going around and whatever. Here are the lines in this commercial, and this commercial has got like 1 million something views, right? And it's a recruitment. We can deceive, persuade, change, influence, inspire. We come from many forms, and we are everywhere. It's a feeling in the dark, ghosts in the machines. Right, that's what they're, and then all the world's a stage, they say. All the world's a stage, right? All the world is a stage. And you go here and you can look at the, did you know the history of video games? These first shooter games, it's all government agents that help them develop it. I mean, unbelievably. Call of Duty, Activision's Call of Duty franchise is an entertainment juggernaut, having sold close to 500 million games. Yet documents acquired through the Freedom of Information Act show that the connections between the national security state and the video game industry go far beyond what was previously known. This is from Schwab Stack. It's a Substack writer, Schwab. And he just released a bunch of stuff on this, so that's why I'm reading it. The U.S. Air Force flew a group of entertainment executives, including Call of Duty Activision Blizzard producer they use these video games. They help develop them, right? First of all, they help develop them. Here's what he says: the U.S. military using video games and gaming culture as tools of psychological warfare as part of their standard rules of engagement. The relationship between the commercial games industry and the American military establishment goes deeper than consultation. U.S. military's first involvement with gaming was more of an accident, with a physicist creating tennis for two in the 1950s. So they go through the whole history here, right? This is the Atlantic talking about the relationship, right? Beginning in 1960 and ending in the 1990s, the armed forces took the lead in financing, sponsoring, and inventing the specific technology used in video games. And finally, early in 1999, the U.S. Army leaders recognized a need for a major transformation of our forces to overcome the limitations of our current simulation technologies. Effecting this transformation requires developing new training and simulation systems for dealing with future conflicts and leverage the capabilities of both entertainment and academia. So, and it's all, California based and all that stuff, right? So when you start to think, right, about what even just the images mean, right, we can go back into some of our earliest history to understand why this orchestrator would even be there in the first place. So the history of the wand, for example, right, the magician's wand. So the magician that uses this wand, all of those icons come from pre-Christian history in Europe. The Celtic Druidic faith, which was combined with the Phoenicians and the Canaanites and spread throughout all around the waters of Europe. So right up to Ireland, right? Right up to Ireland, through the Mediterranean, Carthage. Not the inland stuff. They moved in as time went on as missionaries, really. The Druids were missionaries. And the way they functioned, the height of their religious faith was the Merlin type character. And Merlin and all these other magicians used wands, right? Our tradition of the wand can be seen in the orchestrator. You can see that orchestrator in the commercial they're talking about. Using the orchestra baton actually comes from that faith. That's why it's so important. Now, the wands themselves were made of the wood from a holly tree. So they're made of holly wood, right? They're made of holly wood. And the whole point of this religion is not necessarily to be the star of the show. The conductor, in this case, is not the star of the show in the same way that a priest in the Christian setup would be. The star of the show here is to the people dancing to the music, right? You play the wand and people move. And that's the whole aesthetic, right? It's what's going on when you play the wand, but the power is hidden and runs with the actual control of the wand, right? The same way music or any kind of recital still looks to this day, right? The orchestrator could be up on a pedestal for sure, but it doesn't need to be that way, right? They can easily run it out of the line of sight from the audience. The show you're there for is not the conductor. You're there to see and hear the music or the dance or whatever, right? Or to participate. And the orchestrator is the one who makes it all move, right? So this idea that the FBI has been heavily involved in messaging, we know in movies it's been going on for a long time. Hollywood itself was taken over many years ago by a propaganda arm. That is not even in question, right? And video games make sense that they would be part of that too, right? I don't think this is, what's his name stuff is not big revelations that we should all go, wow, oh my God, right? No. The news piece is the one that came recently, even though it was already always there. I mean, we can't have much faith in our news from before that. But now that it's in the open, people can say it's broadcast quality or not. But now that we're seeing these institutions actually shape narrative and push people in different directions, we can start to understand why this country is so divided and why people are fighting so much. This is exactly what happened in China, right? China has a zero trust society, a low trust society, because they got the people to fight first during the Cultural Revolution. They all hate each other there, right? Everyone disagrees and they're always suspicious of one another, and Now, there's probably some people living well in China, but this is a big part of what the Chinese Communist Party did to the people, right? It made sure they were not strong together and would fight against each other. And in America, if you look at the way poor people, poor Black people, and poor American, poor white people interact, right? It's not good, right? The poor people in America hate each other. All of them do, right? Always fighting. We see it every day. We see it all the time, right? And the ability to keep people motivated to fight is a big part of this. And that's why, you know, the Wormtongue piece, when he said Wormtongue, when Elon Musk said Wormtongue, he said Twitter was the Wormtongue. As a Bitcoiner, we know that's not exactly true, right? Twitter is helpful. It's fixing the media piece. It's fixing information, right? But information is only one obstacle from us having real money. It's a big one, energy the other. That's why we always talk about energy here and information. Together, those things have to become much more accessible for us to be able to have a hyper-Bitcoinized world. And those are the things that are really blocking or buttressing and keeping the US dollar up. But in the end, it's not just Twitter, it's the dollar itself, right? Because everyone's trying to make a bit of money, everyone's trying to motivate other people so that they could make money. It doesn't matter to what ends they motivate them. It doesn't matter to what direction they motivate them. The incentives are just you personally make money, and however people go about it, it's fine, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what collateral damage there is. That's why Bitcoin fixes this, right? In the end, Bitcoin, because it aligns incentives, because it helps people be motivated for similar things, or at least things that are transparent and are able to coordinate with way less forethought, right? They sort of naturally can coordinate because of the nature of Bitcoin and because of what it bends us towards, right? Because of what it bends us towards. You then have the opportunity to get rid of the same way that, if you remember the book and the movie, when to get Wormtongue out, it just took light, right? It just took light in the hall next to the king, and the poison inside of him was gone. Now, the poison inside of the king of Rohan that Wormtongue put, I see Yol Roth as the same thing. Like, Yol Roth is not the Wormtongue. He's been poisoned also. That's how I see it. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. Again, I'm no fan of Yol Roth, right? I believe that what he wrote about in his book, in his dissertation, could be going on a bigger scale because people control messaging, right? So I'm not saying he is 100% innocent here, but from what I see with the Twitter stuff, I think he believed what he was doing. And that isn't really a crime, but he has been victimized in the same way that the king was. He is not himself Wormtongue, as I guess what I'm getting at, right? I'm more along the lines of what Glenn Greenwald sees, that, okay, we can have differences in how these things politically are understood. There's still room to have this disagreement. But the FBI and these guys getting involved, that's clear, right? They were the ones who turned this thing into a hypnotic situation. They're the ones who made Twitter a puppet. Yol Roth is just an idiot. He's just an idiot, right? I mean, other than the thing that he wrote in college, which is awful, he's an idiot, right? He's a dupe. So the puppet here, the puppet master, and that's exactly what it is. It's a string thing, right? The whole point when you are one of these Psy-ops people is to be able to manipulate and control. I mean, that's the reason they do it, right? Again, there's a satisfaction from doing it, from properly conducting stuff. So that is what I see this morning, right? I don't see Jack Dorsey is going to jail. I see that we've finally targeted who shouldn't be involved in any of this stuff, and it is the propagandizing of political messaging, of institutional accountability, let's say, right? Do you think that there's any banning of criticism of FBI? I'd say at this point, it's there, right? I'd say it looks like they've suppressed stories about themselves. So what are we going to do with these guys? There's some people who say, oh, we got to get rid of the FBI altogether. I'm there. I mean, I don't think we need to keep a federal prosecution force in place. I think that the United States can handle it at the state level, and every state can manage it themselves. I don't think you need a federal oversight thing anymore, and it's definitely grown so large that it's got to be pulled out, which will be a great thing for Bitcoin. I mean, I continue to predict that almost all these institutions, the SEC, it's not going to make it, right? The FBI, not going to make it. These guys are not going to make it. These are things we built in order to get through the Depression, World War II, but we never shut it off. We left everything running from World War II. We just left the entire war machine going. We never turned it off. And now it's being used on us. The same thing we've exported for years is come home to America and is being used on us now. So if there isn't poetic justice in that, I don't know what. We got to get through it, right? Most other countries didn't get through it. The force of American Hollywood propaganda had the whole world dancing to a tune, and they were unable to break the spell. Of all the people that can break the spell, it's the ones who created it, I think, that can do it. And it looks like we're on a road. And of course, as we know, the only way to really do it is to attack the money. And that's why we're Bitcoiners, because the only way to get through the hypnotism of Hollywood, I can barely watch movies since I became a Bitcoiner. I'll be honest. I can't. I can't do it anymore. Like, I used to love movies. I can barely watch a movie now. Really rare. I've seen a movie this year, maybe, one or two, and none of them are good. I can't watch them anymore. Now, I know the quality's gone down. I wish I could watch a movie. I wish there was a good one, but it's not something I do anymore. And a lot of it has to do with time preference changing, your interest changing. And that's what Bitcoin can do for everyone, right? That's why Bitcoin is such a powerful force. It has nothing to do with the math. It has nothing to do with even the money part necessarily. It has to do with being able to understand the world in front of you, make better choices, understand people's incentives. If you don't understand someone's incentives, you can barely have a conversation with them. That's what makes, some of these anonymous people where I can sort of understand what Jordan Peterson is saying. If you don't, in a conversation, know where someone's coming from, you can't really adjust yourself to speak with them, right? Like when I speak here with you guys, it's a slight adjustment, very minimal of how I just am normally, right? But if I speak in public on a stage, it's another type of adjustment. It's still me, right? But you adjust for the situation you're in. We all do, right? So there you go. All right. Bud says, I agree. He is a puppet, not a master yet. Muslim Bitcoiner, how much does this current CPI on impact anything at this point? Nah, it's all fake. CPI is a scam. It doesn't make any difference, Muslim Bitcoiner. I can't imagine it. It's been tricked out for a long time, so I continue to think they get what they asked for, channeling some Jordan Maxwell on this morning and on top of the morning memes. Yeah, quality broadcasting as always. Thanks, West Coast Boots. All right, team. Sunday morning. Let me go see my kids. Chill out with them a bit. Enjoy our day. Peace, guys. See you tomorrow morning. Same time. We don't miss. Enjoy your day, guys.